Well, no, it's not.
Yes. Okay, so good. After your caffeine transfusion, I hope you're beginning to wake up from the mathematics-induced insomnia. So let's go on. So we've seen how, if I take all this fancy formulation, that we get Hamilton, given a Hamiltonian of fundamental 2 form, we get a globally defined vector field, and the classical mechanics, the trajectories are just given by the integral curves of this vector field. But let's go on a little bit more from that to see how Poisson brackets appear in this formulation. Now, if we apply a Hamiltonian vector field, this is not necessarily one from a Hamiltonian, so the word Hamiltonian only appeared once. So with Hamiltonian vector field A hat for any zero form A, and we apply it to a zero form B. Okay, so this is linear. It's a vector field, so it's a linear differential operator applied to a function. So that makes sense. So A hat applied to B, which we will call the Poisson bracket of A and B, is the, we obtain dA by dP dV by dQ minus dA by dQ dV by dP. So it's just using an explicit form in a flat coordinate system for A hat that I introduced a couple of slides ago. Okay, so that gives me the usual Poisson bracket. Okay, so it's consistent with the definition we had before. The interesting thing to see is the Poisson bracket is just the action of the Hamiltonian vector field for A applied to B, or therefore minus the action of the Hamiltonian vector field for B applied to A. As I said before, just repeating it, that the global coordinate invariant definition of the exterior derivative dV of zero form is that when you apply it to an arbitrary vector field x, you get dV of x is equal to x applied to B. So, what you should check, this is just what we did on the other slide, but just check that on a flat manifold dV has that form, and therefore dV applied to A hat. Okay, so I apply the remember, A hat is a Hamiltonian vector field, and B is a zero form, so dB is a 1 form. So 1 form is something that maps vectors to zero forms of functions. So that makes sense. And by definition of what dB is, that means that dB applied to A hat is just A hat applied to B. Okay, it's irrelevant to Hamiltonian vector field, just because A hat is a vector field. Okay. On the other hand, by the definition of the Hamiltonian vector field, dB applied to A hat is equal to omega, the fundamental 2 form, applied to B hat and A hat. I mean, this is just true for any vector field A at X, so I'm just choosing the vector field A hat in its place. So this is just a definition of what we meant by B hat. Not a special case of it. So we can see that we can find a more global definition of the Poisson bracket rather than just the one in the global coordinate system in flat space. We can define the Poisson bracket of A and B as minus omega of A hat and B hat. So apply the fundamental 2 form to the Hamiltonian vector fields corresponding to 2 functions A and B, i.e. A hat and B hat. And the only thing that's confusing is the minus sign. And the problem with symplectic systems is there always has to be a minus sign somewhere, and this is probably the most convenient place I could find to put it. But it also means that no 2 books will ever have the same formula because they all have their minus signs slightly different. The important thing is just be consistent when you put the minus signs. Okay, so instead of defining the Poisson bracket in terms of partial derivatives, which is the form it has in the local coordinate system, of course, we can define it abstractly just in terms of the fundamental 2 form and Hamiltonian vector field, which are always well-defined global objects. So the Poisson bracket itself, which takes 2 functions, 2 zero forms, and gives you a zero form, is a well-defined local global object. Now let's come back to these exterior derivatives, which we discussed a bit before. So we're going to take a small digression to find out some remarkable properties of Hamiltonian vector fields and Poisson brackets. So this is where things, well, surprisingly, not only would classical mechanics come out to have nice properties, but it turns out so will our discrete integrators, which is why we're going into all this fancy stuff. So as I said before, the exterior derivative of one form theta, or one form field theta, is defined to be the two form d theta of, is defined by applying two arbitrary vector fields x and y. It gives you x of theta of y minus y of theta of x, which is naturally symmetrized, and then we have to have this correction minus theta of the commutator of x and y. So this definition satisfies d squared equals 0, even if the vector fields you're using do not commute. Right. So in a coordinate basis, d mu, when the vector fields are applying it to d mu and d mu, so d by the x mu and d by the x mu, then the commutator vanishes and you just get the anti-symmetrization. So it's basically a curl. So this is a sort of abstract generalization of the curl operation. So d applied to a zero form was del, basically. It was the gradient d applied to a one form is basically a curl. So it's not too surprising. It's somewhat million like this. So what happens when we apply the exterior derivative d to a two form? So if omega is a two form, not necessarily a fundamental two form, just any old two form. So d omega is a three form. So it takes this totally antisymmetric function, or if we apply it to three vector fields, x, y, and z. And we define it in the fairly obvious way as x applied to omega of y and z, plus y applied to omega of z and x, plus z applied to omega of x and y. And then you could additionally subtract x applied to omega of z and y and get all six permutations. But since omega is already antisymmetric, we don't need those. We need to choose the cyclic permutations of the three, and then it's already automatically defined to be totally antisymmetric. And then we need to fix it up for the non-case where x, where the vector fields don't commute, by subtracting omega of the commutator of x and y with z and cyclic permutation. So again, it's totally antisymmetric. And in fact,
is that the only way to get them to work? Is that unique?
Yes, well, upward scale. Yes, it's unique. We want d squared to be 0. And in fact, this gives you a good idea of the general definition of d for an RTK form. Is the first part is you just apply, you make a totally asymmetric application and put it in commutators. So the structure for an arbitrary definition of d applied to k forms is fairly obvious from this, but we only need it up to the two forms. And as I said, these definitions are defined such that d squared equals 0. Okay, if I try two steps going from k forms to k plus 2 forms by using the exterior derivative, I always get 0. So from a mathematician's point of view, in the name of studying global structural manifolds, the interesting objects are the objects whose exterior derivative vanishes, either they're called closed, but which are not the exterior derivative of something else. So the object, these belong to what are called cohomology classes, and you get something called the Ram cohomology. But that direction is one which we don't need to go in here, fortunately. So let's consider d squared on f, where f is a one form. Okay. So, sorry, f is a 0 form. So this gives us a 2 form. So we apply it to two vector fields. And now I want to verify that this is 0. This is the same one we did before, right? And we could see that you just get the operator x, y minus yx minus the commutator. So that's why the commutator term is needed. Now let's do the more interesting case. It starts off with a one form theta, which is not the d or anything, right? So it's not exact. It's not. So you can think of theta is a vector field which cannot be derived from a potential. And we want to take d squared, so we want to take its exterior derivative twice, and what we want to make sure is that we get 0. So from the definition of of D applied to the two form, d theta, we get f d theta of y and z plus cyclic permutations minus d theta of the commutator of action y and z plus cyclic permutations. Okay? So, now we remember d theta was defined by saying that d theta applied to y and z is just y applied to theta of z minus z applied to theta of y minus theta of the commutator of y and z. So that gives me the first line there just for x d theta of y and z. The second line gives me the term for the commutator. So fills out cyclic permutation. Well, the commutator term gives me the commutator of action y, which is a vector field, applied to theta of z, minus z applied to theta of the commutator of action y. And finally, theta of the commutator of x and y with z, so a double commutator. So I'm just substituting the definition of what I mean by d theta into the definition of d theta. And now that quantity, well, you can see that if I expand this out, I get 0 because of the Jacobi identity, which shows that the cyclic permutation of these nested commutators is equal to 0. Now, Jacobi identity for commutators is a trivial identity. You just expand out all the commutators and you'll see that it is 0 just by antisymmetry. Okay? So that's what guarantees that d squared of theta is always equal to 0 for any one form theta. Okay, you should check that with algebra, but it's actually not a trivial. Now, notice that if I apply the Hamiltonian vector field A hat to the Poisson bracket of B and C, then that is, well, by definition, that since A hat is a vector field, and the Poisson bracket of B and C is just a 0 form, what that must be saying as the exterior derivative d of the function for Poisson bracket of B and C applied to the vector field A hat. That was just the definition of what I meant by the exterior derivative of a 0 form or function. But now, using the definition of what I meant mean by Hamiltonian vector field, I've got d is from 0 form, that 0 form being the Poisson bracket, that there is a Hamiltonian vector field corresponding to the Poisson bracket. Because that's there's one corresponding to every 0 form. So this exterior derivative of the 0 form applied to a particular vector field A hat is just omega of the Hamiltonian vector field Poisson bracket of B and C hat with A hat. But now we remember our definition of the Poisson bracket, and we see that that is just equal to minus the Poisson bracket of B and C with A, or even if the Poisson bracket is antisymmetric, it's equal to the Poisson bracket of A with the Poisson bracket of B and C. So A hat applied to the Poisson bracket just gives me the Poisson bracket of A with that Poisson bracket. And we can go further because there's a commutator of two Hamiltonian vector fields, A hat and B hat, and apply that to an arbitrary 0 form F. Okay, so there's a commutator, so it's defined to be A hat, B hat minus B hat, A hat, and we can apply that to F. And now B hat applied to F just gave us the Poisson bracket of B with F. That was the definition of the Poisson bracket. So we get A hat applied to the Poisson bracket of B with F minus B hat applied to the Poisson bracket of A and F. But that, using the line above, is just double the Poisson bracket of A with the Poisson bracket of BF minus B Poisson bracket with the Poisson bracket of A and F. So we can express this commutator of Hamiltonian vector fields applied to an arbitrary 0 form in terms of the difference of two nested Poisson brackets. But now comes to the point in this argument where I require that the fundamental two-form is closed, the omega equals 0. Okay, so far that's just consistent as part of the definition, but haven't seemed to play any role. But now, when I use d omega equals 0, that means that d omega applied to any three vector fields in Spanish, identically. So in particular, apply to three Hamiltonian vector fields, A hat, B hat, C hat. So what that gives me is A hat applied to omega, B hat, C hat, plus cyclic permutations, minus the term that corrects the non-commuting nature of the vector field. So there's minus omega the commutator of A hat and B hat with C hat, and its cyclic permutations. So omega of B hat, C hat is of course just the Poisson bracket of C to B, so minus the Poisson bracket B and C. And omega of the commutator of A hat, B hat, with C hat is equal to omega of C hat minus omega of C hat with the commutator of A hat and B hat, because omega is antisymmetric, but it's a two-form. Now the first term is A hat applied to a zero form, which is from the top line worked out. That just gives me this double Poisson bracket of A with the Poisson bracket of C and B. And the second term, using the definition of the Hamiltonian vector field C hat, okay, so omega of C hat with some arbitrary vector field, which happens in this case to be chosen to be the commutator of A hat and B hat, must be just DC applied to A hat, commutator of A hat and B hat. So this was a point where it was important that C hat was a Hamiltonian vector field, so there was a function C which it corresponded to. And in the next line, I can just say, well, DC applied to the commutator of A hat and B hat from the definition of the exterior derivative of a zero form of DC, just say now that the commutator of A hat and B hat is an arbitrary vector field. That just gives me the action of this vector field, A hat, commutator A hat, B hat, acting on the zero form C. And but now we get back to the second bullet point, the action of the commutator on the zero form, as we express that as the difference of two nested Poisson brackets. So I substitute that in. So what I get is a combination of the various nested Poisson brackets with various signs and cyclic permutations. And if I collect those together, what you'll see is that using anti-symmetry, the first two terms cancel. And so what we get left with is minus the Poisson bracket of B with the Poisson bracket of A and C plus the cyclic permutations equals 0. Okay, the equals 0 is because d omega is equal to 0. So what we've shown is that the sum of the cyclic permutations of these nested Poisson brackets was vanished as an identity. Now, if you go to flat space, you can verify that that's true in terms of Poisson brackets, but it takes quite a lot of tedious algebra to prove it. And remember, this is true more generally, not just in flat manifold. So what we've established is actually rather remarkable, which is that Poisson brackets satisfy a Jacobi identity. Okay, so these double Poisson brackets will cyclically permute the arguments. The arguments are just functions. So the Poisson bracket, if you like, is some sort of funny product of functions to give you another function. So we have an antisymmetric product of functions, and it obeys a Jacobi identity. Now this case, as we stressed, is not trivial. The Poisson bracket of commutators, so the Jacobi identity of commutators was trivial, just found out commutators is true. But these Poisson brackets are not commutators. So the fact that they satisfy the Jacobi identity is a non-trivial identity. Okay? So this is a case where we have a product, an antisymmetric product, which satisfies the Jacobi identity, but it is not a commutator algebra, and the Jacobi identity is not trivial. But nevertheless, the fact that we have a product which is antisymmetric and which has a Jacobi identity is actually the definition of an abstract Lie algebra. So what happens is that the space of zero forms, a smooth function on a manifold, on a symplectic manifold, together with the Lie bracket, being the Poisson bracket in this case, is a Lie algebra in itself. So people are familiar with Lie algebras, not surprised. There are very different sorts of Lie algebras from ones you usually come across, matrices and so on. Here are Lie algebra functions with a rather strange product, but it satisfies all the axioms of the Lie algebra. So that's fine, that's an interesting observation, but what's really useful from our point of view is the following remarkable result, that the commutator of two Hamiltonian vector fields is itself a Hamiltonian vector field. Now it's obvious that the commutator of two Hamiltonian vector fields is a vector field, right? That was true for any vector fields. But it's not at all obvious that the commutator itself is Hamiltonian, that it corresponds to a zero form. As I said, the Hamiltonian vector fields are very small subspace of the space of all vector fields. And the way we can prove this is we just consider the action of the commutator of A hat and B hat to an arbitrary zero form F. Okay, so it's a kind of vector field to a function. And using the result we had on the previous slide, we can express that commutator vector F as the combination of two nested Poisson brackets. Now we can, having established the Jacobi identity, we can combine those two nested Poisson brackets into one nested Poisson bracket. That's just using the Jacobi identity. And get rid of the minus sign and just flip all of the arguments of the Poisson bracket. And then we just notice that the Poisson bracket of something with F is equal to the action of the corresponding Hamiltonian vector field for that something applied to F. So in this case, it's the Hamiltonian vector field corresponding to the zero form, which is the Poisson bracket of A and B. But this relation is true for any F, so it must follow that the commutator of two Hamiltonian vector fields is a Hamiltonian vector field, and moreover, it corresponds to a Hamiltonian vector field that corresponds to the zero form, which is the Poisson bracket of A and B. Okay? So this is the key result that we need. So the commutator of two Hamiltonian vector fields is a Hamiltonian vector field corresponding to the Poisson bracket of those vector fields. So Poisson brackets have some very nice properties. So now we can finally get back to symplectic integrators, having left the jungle of differential geometry. So let's consider in particular that we have a zero form S function, which only depends on the coordinate Q, doesn't depend on the numerator. Then its Hamiltonian vector field is particularly simple. Remember, this is in flat space, so I'm using the fundamental two form dq dp. So the Hamiltonian vector field is very easy. It's just minus S, the derivative of S. It's just a good problem, it only depends on Q, times d by dp. I mean, we would accept an arbitrary function, but there are two terms. There's one with d by dp and another with d by dq. But the coefficient of d by dq was the derivative of S with respect to p, which of course is 0, but S doesn't depend on p. So, because S only depends on Q, we can actually explicitly compute the time evolution operator for a finite time, t. So we'll formally call this evolution operator the exponential of t times s hat. So this is the kind of formal exponential, which we'll define just by its power series. It's not powerful with exponential, it's just an ordinary exponential, but for a differential operator. And it was going to define it by its Taylor expansion in the usual way. So we take this operator e to the t s hat, and we apply it to some zero form on phase space f of q and p. So the first thing we can do is we can replace s hat in terms of the basis d by dp. So I get minus s hat of q times t times d by dp. I then expand the exponential using its power series expansion. And then you notice that all this is going to do is it's basically doing a shift on the second argument of this function f by an amount minus s power of q times t. Okay, so the exponential of something is basically takes generated an infinitesimal shift and exponents it into a finite shift. But this is just, the last step is just Taylor series. I'm just expanding at fixed q, I'm expanding this function as a function of second argument only, p minus s times of q times t, and I'm just expanding the Taylor series of t. And I get this on the left. So that's why this exponential operator corresponds to a finite shift in the p coordinate. So what we found is that the Hamiltonian vector field corresponding to S, corresponding to the object, the potential V, which only depends on Q. So I'm calling S here for various irrelevant reasons. But, so if we just have a function that only depends on the coordinates Q, then we can explicitly write down in terms of its Hamiltonian vector field the evolution operator, which only moves the p coordinate. Okay, this is due to the symplectic nature of this thing. And likewise, if I have a zero form t, like kinetic energy, which only depends on the momentum, doesn't depend on the position coordinate, then I can also write down an explicit integrator for a finite time step, e to the t times t hat, where t hat is the Hamiltonian vector field corresponding to t. So notice this time is just t prime of p, but with no minus sign. So that just corresponds to a shift in the first argument of f by an amount t prime of p times the time step times the time interval t. Okay, so if we have functions which only depend on the coordinates or on momenta, then we can integrate them exactly because they just move one of the coordinates. Okay, so this is the basis of symplectic integrators, that we can do these individual steps in this case explicitly, even for a finite time, just by using the exponential. So you remember previously I said the exact solution was e to the t h hat. So you can see where that comes from, except in the case of e to the t h hat, since h hat depends on both q and p, I can't explicitly write down the integrator. But nevertheless, formally, e to the t h hat would be something that follows the classical trajectory. That is the integral curve of the Hamiltonian vector field. That's when we think about it, h hat is the Hamiltonian vector field, so exponentiating that vector field is actually formally what gives us the integral curves. Now, let's come back to this issue of area preservation. So I said that these integrators were symplectic, as well as reversible. So I said that the Jacobian associated with them is 1. So we can see it here explicitly for these two steps. So if we consider the step where we integrate the Hamiltonian vector field S hat, so we just change the momentum, then the Jacobian, the change of coordinates from the initial p's and q's to the final p prime and q primes, corresponds to this determinant. Now, this determinant, the matrix for the Jacobian has got 1 on the diagonal because dq by d. Because basically what it's doing is it's taking a function of q and p and leaves q unchanged, so the dq, so that's the top left-hand one, and it modifies p by something that's only a function of q. So therefore, that means that the bottom corner is also 1. The bottom left-hand corner is the fact that we're changing p by the amount that depends only on q, so that gives us something, in this case minus s double prime of q times t. The top right-hand corner is 0 because we're not changing q. So we get this triangular form with 1s on the diagonal just from the structure of the evolution, namely that we're shifting one variable by an amount that depends only on the other variable. And which is why it's integrable, right? We're changing one variable by an amount that doesn't depend on that variable itself. Likewise, we can do the same with the other variable, and now we get to the triangular matrix, which is triangular the other way. But in either case, these determinants of these matrices are 1, because it doesn't care what the shift is, because it's the off diagonal piece. And the product of the determinants, so the determinant of the matrices is the product of the determinants, which are all 1. So this means that if we take any sequence of these symplectic integrator steps, the result still has the Jacobian 1. So that's why it's all area preserving, because we're doing an individual area preserving steps. On the area preserving, as I said, there's trivial reason it will change each coordinate by an amount of the other coordinate. Okay. Now, not every symplectic integrator is reversible, so they're not necessarily symmetric, but we can always build a symmetric integrator, like the leapfrog one, by just making it symmetric. Put the steps, the S hat steps, symmetrically around a T hat step, or T hat steps around an S hat step. It's another variant of leapfrog, depending on whether you update the mentor positions first, or any sequence of these steps. As long as you construct it symmetrically, you'll be a symmetric symplectic integrator. It'll be reversible and error observing. Okay, so this class of integrators has got some very nice properties, and we can study perhaps the most interesting property by making use of an identity known as the Baker-Campbell-Hausdorff formula. So this was first written down around, I think, around the 1890s, around 1900. I think Baker was in 1890, and the other two slightly later. And what they have the following theory. It says that if A and B belong to some associative algebra, think matrices, but not commutative algebra, then the product of the exponentials e to the A times e to the B can be written as e to the A plus B plus delta. Well, delta is built out of commutators of A and B. So it belongs in the 3D algebra generated by the set A and B. The braces here are not cross brackets, that's just a set of two.
New commutators and commutators, right?
Yeah. So these commutators are commutators of commutators. So they're built out of these just defined by a lead product of commutator. Okay. In fact, the BCH formula tells you a lot more. They're not only telling you that it can be written this way in terms of some delta, it tells you what delta actually is as an expansion. So this is a formal expansion in the number of commutators. So you normally would imagine that A and B got some small parameter in them, and then we're going to give an expansion in that small parameter. And as a rule, it won't converge. So as a rule, it will be some asymptotic expansion or something. But what the formal expansion is it says that delta, so the logarithm of the right, so A plus B plus delta, which is the logarithm of e to the A times e to the B, okay, is the sum for n greater than or equal to 1 of Cn, where the coefficient C1 is just A plus B. That's what would happen if A and B are commuted. So the remaining terms will be 0. And the remaining C's are the commutator terms, and they're defined recursively by this formula. Cn plus 1 is 1 over n plus 1 times minus a half add of Cn minus b, where add x of y is just a commutator of x with y. So it's called the adjoint of y, it's vector x. The reason we're interested in this notation is that trying to write this in terms of commutators is very messy. It's much more elegant to write it in terms of this function add. But remember, add is kind of trivial object, it just gives you the commutator. So that first term is minus a half times the commutator of Cn with a minus b, and that's all we need. The remaining terms are summed from n equals 0 up to the floor of n over 2 of coefficient d2m over 2n factorial, where the b's are Bernoulli numbers, which are the coefficients of x in the expansion of 1 over e to the x minus 1, or something very similar to that. So just the coefficients in Taylor expansion of some simple function like that, times the sum over all k1 through k2n, which are bigger than 1, such the sum of all of them is equal to n. So it's a way of splitting these things up into 2n pieces of this bunch of nested commutators. Add ck1 up to add ck2n with a plus b. So this looks a very bizarre formula, but it's purely an algebraic manipulation to derive it. It's a bit tricky, but it's not really difficult. It's kind of surprising it comes out in terms of these Bernoulli numbers and everything, but this is just a formal identity. Now, let's just look what the first few terms are like. So the first equation is, well, this is saying that e to the a times e to the b is equal to e to the that not up there. So e to the a plus b, plus 1/2 the commutator of a with b, minus 1/12 the double commutator in that combination, minus 1/24th the triple commutator. So I've written this out in some suitably high order. Now, of course, there are a couple of tricks to writing out this expansion, which is, first of all, you've got to remember that the commutators are anti-symmetric, so you can always sort the A's and the B's into a suitable order. You're like, as excellent graphically as you can without making it zero. And secondly, there's still this Jacobi identity that exists. So you want to have to use that to monetize your choice of commutators. And there's a clever thing you can do from a Hall basis, which lets you do this. Gives you a natural ordering on commutators, which makes use of the Jacobi identity to get a LEAP expansion. So I've used that in deriving this formula. So, you know, if you do it manually, you just get more commutators. But it turns out that some of these commutators can be expressed as linear combinations of other ones. That's all that does there. And if you have a symmetric product, because of course we're going to be using symmetric combinations of these things, then, so if I take the log of e to the half a times e to the b times e to the half a again, this is just two applications for BCH formula, so just a bit more algebra. But you can see that I only get a plus b, then I get a double commutator, then I get four commutators, so all the odd commutators go away, which isn't surprising because it's symmetric, and therefore by bound to expanding powers of some step size delta t, not rank a and b, then all the even powers of the, so all the odd powers of the step size would have to vanish by symmetry. So the first two terms are the ones we'll probably use most of all, but that final term could be useful. Of course, you could write down more if you want to. They're not too hard to compute. If you've got time left over this afternoon for these other exercises, you could have fun doing that. So, if we take this Baker-Campbell-Hausdorff formula, and we, for the exponential e to the delta tau times s hat times e to the delta tau times t hat, well, actually, let's make it the leapfrog version, the symmetric version, so it's the half delta tau s hat e to the delta tau t hat times e to the half delta tau s hat. So this is just the form we're writing down what the s hat, t hat, s hat leapfrog integration. So remember, s hat updates, s depends only on q, so s hat updates the p's, t hat t only depends on p, so it updates the q's. So that's the leapfrog integration. And if I do a sequence of tau over delta tau steps to get a long trajectory, and it's tau, this can be written as e to the h hat prime, sorry, h prime hat, delta tau raised to the power delta tau, tau over delta tau, where h prime hat is the zero form, it's the Hamiltonian vector field. It's the vector field, which is built out of the Hamiltonian vector fields t hat and s hat using the BCH formula. Okay, because using the formula I had at the second part of the previous slide, I can combine those product of exponentials into a single exponential with some h prime hat is the vector field with that commutators of s hats and t hats. Okay, and that is t hat plus s hat minus 1 over 24 times those double commutators. Okay, so that's just the BCH formula, truncated at that order, so they're order delta t to the fourth terms. And then you notice that since h prime hat is a vector field which commutes with itself, because everything commutes with itself, this must just equal e to the h prime hat times tau. Okay, that's just the product of commuting exponentials. That's easy to do. So you can see that the leapfrog integrator is in fact an integrator which integrates a vector field h prime hat. Now, that's not surprising. That's what we mean by saying it's an integrator of something, but that's a rather messy vector field. However, this is where magic appears. We've proved that the commutator of two Hamiltonian vector fields was Hamiltonian. In other words, there existed a function for any commutative Hamiltonian vector field for which that vector field corresponded to. and that function is the Poisson bracket. So there exists an H prime, exists a zero form function on the manifold H prime, which equals first labeled H, and then their corrections which are built out of nested Poisson brackets of S and T. Okay? So the leapfrog integrator, which we wrote down, actually up to order delta t to the fourth, or whatever we will expand this to, can be expressed in terms of being the exact integrator, i.e. exactly conserving H prime. So there's some Hamiltonian, if you like, which is conserved up to order delta t squared, sorry, up to order delta t to the fourth in this case. And that Hamiltonian being explicitly written down in terms of these Poisson brackets of the S and the T. If I were to choose a leapfrog integrator where I put the S hats and the T hats the other way around, I'll just get some different combination of the Poisson brackets. So slightly different, so-called shadow Hamiltonian. Yeah.
Sorry, so this order delta t to the fourth is just because of your truncation of the BCH.
That's right.
So
That's right.
your fixed leapfrog scheme, say, that gives you order delta t squared, but you could figure this out to arbitrary.
That's right. That's right. So I could compute. Well, it won't converge in general.
But
I can compute the expansion to arbitrary order delta t to get the shadow Hamiltonian is conserved by the leapfrog integrator.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So in other words, H prime do not equal to H, so it's not conserving H. So the error is that it can conserve H r order delta t squared, but it does conserve H prime up to whatever we compute H prime.
Right, but this delta t.
That's my approximation for H prime because I haven't spaced to write down.
Yeah. Can you show that, like you said, if delta t is arbitrarily large, then you have there's always a shadow Hamiltonian.
Actually, I prove the opposite, that for whatever value of delta t you have, there's never a shadow Hamiltonian in the sense that this series doesn't converge.
Right.
Because I think the way to see that, I think one point ahead of myself, that's fine, which is that if I choose the momentum to be large enough, okay, then I can always make the terms in the series be part of the coefficients, Poisson brackets arbitrarily large, and therefore mess up the convergence and make sure it doesn't converge. So how much can we make delta t? I can choose a p, which is going to be big enough to stop it converging. However, that's if you're choosing your p's reasonably, then the series will converge for up to some delta t, which is regular unstable, which is the same occurrence as the shadow Hamiltonian ceasing to exist. I was really I'm more careful about it. This is an absolute expansion. There are terms which are of the order of e to the something over delta t corrections to this, which don't appear in Taylor expansion. And if delta t is small enough, those terms are exponentially small. But at some point, those terms dominate, as in the other asymptotic expansion. And the problem here is also that that's true for any delta t if the momentum is. So it's not just a fixed value. Mm-hmm.
How will this new H prime look if I'm trying to proceed on a fixed space compared to the original X?
Well, okay. I am not going to answer that question because actually it's one of the exercises which is just about to come up. Is to compute what this thing is for a simple system on phase space to see what the shadow Hamiltonian actually is. And it's just a function from phase space, okay, which is H plus something which is got a something small if delta t is small and p is enormous. Okay, but it's easy to compute. You just calculate Poisson brackets. Okay, so what we've shown is this property that because the commutator of Hamiltonian vector fields is itself Hamiltonian, and because it's Hamiltonian for the Poisson bracket. And because we have this BCH expansion, that there's always this shadow Hamiltonian which is conserved, albeit only as an asymptotic expansion, but in practice, as long as your integrator doesn't go unstable, the shadow Hamiltonian is a good approximation, and the corrections are exponentially small, not particularly as unstable. So all symplectic integrators have a shadow Hamiltonian, and we know the expansion with enough algebra, we can compute what that shadow Hamiltonian is. And as I say, this is a best possible fact. It is an asymptotic expansion, and it doesn't converge as any delta t as p and maybe q can get arbitrarily large. In most applications, that's extremely unlikely, and also doesn't matter. But that depends on what you're using it for. Now, in addition to having this sort of shadow Hamiltonian, we also notice something else that's amusing. If you look at the Poisson brackets, then you'll find that some of the Poisson brackets, like the Poisson bracket of S or the Poisson bracket of S and T, in this simple case, are actually independent of P. This is, of course, not generally just true because I chose T to be quadratic in P. Okay, so the Poisson bracket of S and T is linear in P, and therefore the double Poisson bracket just didn't depend on P at all, just a function of S or of Q. So this needn't be the case, but just for this particular choice of quadratic kinetic energy in flat space. But in general, you could find some Poisson brackets which only depend on the subset of the coordinates, and then you can use those to write down new integrator terms, because they can just correspond to shifts in the coordinates that they don't depend on. So you can use these extra symplectic integrator steps to produce fancier compound symplectic integrators, symmetric symplectic integrators. This SST1 will tend to give what's called a forced gradient term. It's a kind of second order. So instead of being first derivative, it's a kind of second derivative term. But it has all the properties we need for a symplectic integrator. We can exponentiate it exactly and so on. And so it gives a symplectic integrator step, which is e to the delta tau times the Hamiltonian vector field corresponding to this double nested Poisson bracket. Okay? Everything here is now computable. And this gives us even more opportunities to construct efficient symplectic integrators. And I'm running a little over time, but this will save me having to continue tomorrow. So you have a few more exercises. The first thing is calculate the leading non-trivial term in the expansion of the shadow Hamiltonian for the set of superharmonic oscillators you considered in the earlier exercise. The answer to the question. And what you'll find actually is the shadow Hamiltonian is not the sum of a kinetic and a potential term. Okay, you get terms that mix the p's and the q's. So unfortunately, you can't find an integrator whose shadow Hamiltonian, the Hamiltonian you wanted to integrate. That would be too nice. But you can at least find out what shadow Hamiltonian is conserved by a particular integrator. So the next exercise is measure this quantity, this shadow Hamiltonian, which is now just a function of phase space. And on a trajectory, using your LEAP integrator or your chemistry integrator, and verify that it really is conserved up to the appropriate order in delta tau. Okay, if you're really enthusiastic, you can compute the next order term in the expansion and verify that too, but that is a bit tedious. Okay. Now, check whether this double Poisson bracket with S with the Poisson bracket S and T depends on P. Hopefully you'll find that it doesn't. And so then you can construct and implement a forced gradient integrator step using the corresponding commutators of Hamiltonian vector fields. Okay? And so you can implement that, and using that you can construct a 5-step symplectic integrator. So you put some free parameters in the various relative step sizes while maintaining the symmetry. And maybe you could use your forced gradient step. You can always put a forced gradient step in the middle without loss of generality here for a 5-step integrator at least. And measure all the Poisson brackets that contribute to the shadow Hamiltonian for this 5-step integrator. So, in other words, you'll have an expression for shadow Hamiltonian which will depend on the Poisson brackets together with the coefficients of the step sizes in your integrator. So measure the average of the Poisson brackets, and if you have enough harmonic oscillators or whatever, then hopefully these Poisson brackets will be fairly constant if you average over starting at various random constant phase space. And if these plus one bracket kind of systems, because it's extensive, so the plus one brackets don't vary very much when you average them, then can you see a way of optimizing your integrator by varying the coefficient, or three coefficients in the integrator to minimize something? You want to use the existence of a conserved shadow to construct a more efficient, construct the best set of parameters in your integrator to minimize the cost. Okay, so that requires a bit more thought. Okay, and that's the end.
Okay, well, not necessarily coming around tomorrow as well, so I can to discuss this in any more detail. Be back here at 2 o'clock. Break early for lunch. TST term, right?
Yeah.
Force gradient doesn't.
So no, because you're protecting, well, it would be for a homogosulator, but in general,
White walkers and the very first, did you read the book? They weren't just, they were white, they weren't like the things that they were actually saying, yeah, because they were also stops before you get this one. And then the others are all watching from the forest. The white walkers. Yeah, that's the section first scene in this whole series. Not like tropes,
You want to leave this stuff in here again?